Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream here on the channel for the Black Hood Group. I am your host slash chauffeur, BHCxDark. Name is always there in the corner, and as always, you can follow along on YouTube and Facebook at the Black Hood Group, and then follow along at my name directly on Twitch, Twitter, Steam, Trovo, TikTok, Instagram. So, welcome to Monday. It is February 20th of 2023. And I'm on my way to work. It is a fairly decent day, weather-wise anyway. Pretty clear skies. You see some clouds on the horizon, but nothing over where I am at the moment. So, guessing that's good. So hopefully the weather will stay withstanding like this. Not bad. Not bad. It was a fairly busy day yesterday, which apparently now it's just going to be a thing where it's just going to be busy every day in the hospital. We had more people come in. I wouldn't say more people. I would say it was pretty much even on the amount of people that have been to our hospital system before versus ones that have not. And come on, anyway. So yeah, it was pretty consistent, half and half, pretty much. People who have been to the hospital system before versus who have not. And by not, I mean people who probably recent transplants from some other place, mostly outside of Florida, to people who've lived their whole lives somewhere else outside of this county, who just decided, like, hey, instead of going to a hospital close to where I live, let me go bother these people somewhere else entirely different. So that happens more often than you think as well. Now, if you know anything about South Florida, obviously you know the three major counties here. You have Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. It's starting from south going north. Now, Miami-Dade has multiple cities. It's not just Miami, but you have many cities, some larger, some smaller. Now, there is one particular area that is very far from where I live in Miami. Damn people, man, in my way. Anyway, there's one particular area that is very far from where I live, even here in North Miami. It is just far as hell. There's an area called Homestead. Homestead is mostly it's mostly what Florida used to look like before all the development. A lot of swampland, country land, things like that. A lot of orange groves down there. You ever heard of Knott's Berry Farms? It's down there. So that area is very small. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have things down there, because they do. But on more than one occasion, we've had people make that trip from the Homestead area to our hospital specifically. Now, that distance from where they're coming from versus where they ended up Come on, people. What is it with people today? Let's go. So anyway, there are plenty, and by plenty I mean plenty, of medical facilities between urgent care and actual full-on hospitals between Homestead and where I work. Plenty of facilities. So if you're coming up from that area and you make the conscious choice to say not go to any of those and just come straight to us, you are a problem. And we're going to associate you as a problem. Reason being, poor decision making. Because even if you don't like the hospitals closest to you, there are still plenty of other facilities between you and us in Homestead that you can go to. So do so. The same goes the other way. If you're driving down from Palm Beach County, you are bypassing a ridiculous amount of medical facilities before arriving at us. No. Just no. Stop doing that. Stay where you're at. Go to a hospital close to you. Or if you don't like the one closest to you, go to the next closest one. Because if you're coming down from Palm Beach County or up from Homestead, there's still a ridiculous amount of facilities between where you're coming from and where we are. So make a conscious choice before you get labeled a problem. Because even if you don't hear it, we're going to talk crap about you. And be like, what in God's name are you doing? Coming from wherever it is you're coming from and ending up here at where I work. Not that I don't want to work. I have a job to do. But all it does is it shows me that regular people, especially nowadays, have absolutely disgusting decision-making skills. Absolutely terrible. So I ask, again, stick to your area. Or if not your immediate area, at least close enough. Because if you're coming to us and your home address or where you're coming from is really far away, like we're talking about an hour drive, 45-minute drive, even a 30-minute drive, then maybe you shouldn't be in charge of making decisions for stuff at all. Because it goes to show you can't be responsible to make a conscious decision. Especially one that has to do with your own health. So there's that. Had way too many people that had never been there before. Now, kind of segueing into this, we had a patient who, again, never been there before, but their reason for being there was, I would say, a very scary situation in a sense that it was, I'm guessing for them, very difficult to deal with. report this incident to the local authorities, they didn't give themselves any kind of leeway or time-wise. So, Ring King chimes in down below. We were going to do podcasting on Saturday, but it's cool. Things happen. So he states that less people are playing DC Multiverses, which is that Super Smash Brothers like game, but it stars characters from the WB and DC universe. And by DC, I mean like your Superman, your Batman, like those kinds of characters. But it also paired up the likes of like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and characters from Steve's universe. So, very weird concept, very weird amalgamation of characters thrown in. But ultimately, there's a declining player rate as ranking states below. Again, showing that at the end of the day, all other, party-like fighting games are always going to hold second fiddle to Super Smash Bros., which is still the standard when it comes to party fighting games. They have the best characters, they have the best mechanics, they have the best of everything. It can't be beat. And for those of you that are not in the know, the latest version of Super Smash Bros. Is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch. This released a good couple years ago. And since then, they have debuted additional characters. A couple more from various franchises that have appeared on a Nintendo console at one point or another, as well as some that have never appeared on a Nintendo console before, at least in their own game. A couple right off the top of my head, Cloud and Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII never appeared on Nintendo console, but both of these guys are in Smash. Sora from Kingdom Hearts was actually the last character to be announced for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Kingdom Hearts has never been on a Nintendo console. Yet we have Sora in Kingdom Hearts. So, like I said, it's a very weird combination of characters, most of which are Nintendo characters or characters that have appeared on a Nintendo console at some point in time, whether through their own gaming properties or in some way, shape, or form are associated with Nintendo. So, you just can't beat it. Smash has the best characters, the best mechanics, the best stages, the best of everything. When they were going to announce new characters, it was a thing to see. It was like there were YouTubers that would record themselves live reacting to the characters being announced. And I still watch some of those because some of the reactions are the best. So Ring King comes in below, he's like, correct, this article stated went down over 90%. It just can't compete. Same with Nickelodeon and Sony All-Stars. Yep. Also correct. At the end of the day, they're always going to be compared to Super Smash Brothers, and they don't compare. They never will. Super Smash Brothers is the standard. It will always be the standard. And it will always be better than any copies or clones that could ever come out. That's just it. They got it right the first time and only built on an already great concept and made it better with each iteration. I mean, the original Smash Brothers came out on the Nintendo 64. We're talking about that long ago. that this franchise has existed. And since then, it's only gotten better with time. It's only gotten better and better. It's gotten bigger. They've added more features, more modes, and as always, more characters. Now, there was a time where you had clone characters. They were characters that had the same moveset as an already established character, just like a different beginning. But in time, even those characters came into their own and became something else. It's just like perfect example. In the original Smash Brothers, which is the one on the N64, one of the unlockable characters was Captain Falcon, which was the driver of the Blue Falcon, which is the Blue Race card from F-Zero, from the famous Blue Zero, F-Zero. In Super Smash Brothers Melee, which came out on the GameCube, his clone character was Ganondorf, which they had the same moveset, it's just Ganondorf moved a little bit slower, but his moves were more powerful. Since then, Ganondorf actually now has his own moveset. Still similar to Captain Falcon, but now he has his own Ultimate Smash moves as well as moves that are just his. Same goes with many other characters. Ring King says so, but I'll be frank, I'm surprised DC didn't last on because they have amazing, iconic characters in their franchises. Agreed. Everyone knows Batman, Superman, Scooby-Doo, Bugs Bunny, which is also another character in DC Multiverses. So it's crazy that even those beloved characters couldn't help sustain the game's lifespan. I think the reason that was because Multiverses came out when they had the DC fighting games, DC versus Mortal Kombat. So you had multiple games where you could play as Superman, Batman, the Flash, Green Lantern, iconic comic book characters in a more grisly sense. And I think that's part of the reason why, multiverses didn't become a thing because again, you already had other games that featured DC Universe characters, and you basically tried to pair them up with the likes of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo and Bugs Bunny, who were never really known for being physical in a sense of like a one-on-one fighting stuff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they were, kind of screwy characters, comedic characters, and they were fun characters in their own sense from, their source material, Shaggy being in the Scooby-Doo shows and Bugs Bunny being a Looney Tunes character. But they were never really like, okay, do I really want to pit these two against each other, against the likes of like Superman and Batman, who are superpowered characters in their own sense. Like, Batman is an expert martial artist who knows multiple forms of martial arts as well as has the utility belt full of gadgets that allow him to do literally just about anything. And then you have Superman, literally Superman, the last son of Krypton, fighting against Bugs Bunny. Like, the idea was weird, and the execution was good enough, but there was no lasting concept. There wasn't anything about the game that made you want to keep coming back outside of the screwy sense of a mixed universe combat type thing. Like, I don't know, man. It's just the idea doesn't, like, the concept of multiverses and their character roster. Like, I never saw it as something that would be sticking around for a long time. Because, again, you have these zany Looney Tunes type characters versus literally living gods. Like, I didn't know where they were going to go with it. I'm guessing they just tried to build something that ultimately was nothing short of a one-trick pony. At least with Smash Brothers, like, you have the fighting concept. It's there. But even from the initial Smash Brothers, like, you had a story mode. You had multiple fighting modes. Like, you could do a survival match. You know, you against 100 wireframe models from Super Smash Brothers Melee. You know, you had different ways of playing the game where it wasn't just a one-on-one fight. It wasn't just an all-out Smash brawl. You know, you could definitely go in, and even though you still had some fight mechanics, you can fine-tune them and turn it into something different. Smash gave you that capability. These other games, they tried to be too much like Smash without being Smash. And they ultimately fell short because at the end of the day, they will always be compared to being coming in, or are you staying out? Stay in your lane. Anyway. They tried too hard to be like Super Smash Bros. While still trying to not be Super Smash Bros. But ultimately, even with their attempts to not be like Smash, they still got compared to it. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Are you Smash or are you something else? And they couldn't compare. That's just what it comes down to. They could not compare. They could not establish their own formula without ultimately coming down and being, oh, it's a Smash Bros. It's a Smash copy. Or it's too similar to Super Smash Bros. Which, like I said before, they got it right the first time. And when they built up from there, they ran with it. They ran with the formula that they had created and ultimately created something that, I mean, to this day, is still the standard when it comes to the party fighting. I mean, what place could you go to? What convention, what atmosphere can you go to where video games are going to be played and there isn't at least one TV or console setup where you don't see Super Smash Bros. It's everywhere. No, because the thing is, like, then when you get into a traditional fighting game, you're going to get compared to the likes of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which you can do your own thing, like DC did with I forgot what the hell the game's called. But you'll then get compared to the more grittier fighting games. But then at that point, you can't introduce or you can't bring in characters like, you know, Steven from Steven Universe, Bugs Bunny. Like, you can't bring these characters in because ultimately they would be so out of place. Like, if you thought Superman and Batman were out of place in multiverses, Bugs Bunny would be epically out of place in a game that played a lot like Mortal Kombat. Injustice, that's the one. Yes, exactly. You would have a game like Injustice, which is successful on its own because of what it is and what it's meant to be. So you have a game like Injustice, you can't have a character like Bugs Bunny come in because then they would be extremely out of place. Like, I thought Batman and Superman were out of place in multiverses. Imagine the reverse. Bugs Bunny in Injustice, or a game like Injustice. It would just be so out of pocket. It would be ridiculous to the point where people would be extremely turned off. So, I don't think they should have done something like a traditional fighting game with multiverses, but at the same time, they should have maybe, locked down their concept for what multiverses should have been, which ultimately was going to be just what it ended up being, which is a Smash clone. Now, should they have done more with it? Absolutely. They could have. There you go. That would have been perfect. Something more similar to Power Stone, which we haven't had anything like Power Stone since Power Stone. That way, every character can be in it without it being awkward. Agreed. So, for those of you that don't know, Power Stone 1 and 2 were these fighting games that came out on the Dreamcast, if you can believe it. The Dreamcast, Sega Dreamcast, way back in the day. That it was a 3D fighting game, but it didn't have that whole, like you can only move left or left right, kind of side-scrolling mechanics to it. It was a free-moving 3D fighting game. None of its characters had ever been seen before. They were all brand new characters. So I would say if Multiverses was played more like Power Stone, it would have made a lot more sense. Because you think about it, Batman has been known to take on multiple enemies at once. So has Superman. Bugs Bunny has been known to handle multiple, people at the same time. Steven Universe has been known to do it. So they could have easily done that. In fact, Shaggy, his most famous fight scene actually has him taking down an entire group of bikers single-handedly. Well, that's Power Stone. Had they done multiverses similar to Power Stone from the Dreamcast, I think they would have had a hit on their hands. A bigger hit than they did now. And even though I say hit in quotation, because player base is down. So yeah, I absolutely believe that if multiverses played like Power Stone, it would have been more successful. But unfortunately, that ship has already sailed. I don't think there's going to be anything more coming out of multiverses going into the future. They've seen that the formula they had to work with didn't work, or it wasn't long standing as maybe they would have hoped for. But it might give pause, might give thought to someone else maybe trying it and thinking, well, being a Smash Brothers clone didn't work. You can't do a traditional fighting game without having it be too awkward with some of these characters. What other fighting game styles are there? Well, Power Stone. In fact, you know this one, Ring King. On the original PlayStation, there was a fighting game that was similar to it, but it featured original characters paired with some characters from Final Fantasy VII. The game was called Urgi, or Urguys, or however the hell it was spelled or pronounced. But that game was a 3D fighting game that has similar mechanics to Power Stone, where you had the free roaming, moving around, but it was a fighting game. So it can be done. And you can have these iconic characters in that setting and still have to play correctly. So will we see something like it going into the future? Maybe. But as long as Smash Brothers reigns king in the fighting game arena, you're going to be hard-pressed to find... Yeah, I wish I still had it. Unfortunately, I no longer own my PlayStation or any of the games that I had with it. It is unfortunate. I am trying to rebuild my gaming library since I've lost many things in the past. So I'm going to try and build it back up. But that is a conversation for another time. So it is time for me to get into work. It is that time. So we're going to go ahead and cut the stream out here. I will be back again tomorrow around 3:30ish for another episode of me driving to work. I have been BHCxDark of the Black Hood Crew. Name is always there in the corner. You can follow along on YouTube and Facebook at the Black Hood Crew, and then follow along at my name directly on Twitch, Twitter, Steam, Trovo, TikTok, Instagram. Until tomorrow, be safe, be smart, and be excellent to each other. Take it easy and be safe.